All right, where to start here? Nick Fuentes, there was a thing that went on with Freedom Fest and this guy Jason Rink, who made a documentary about Nick Fuentes. From what I understand, it's not Nick Fuentes' film; it's a documentary that was made about him. And the documentary was focused around the federal government seizing several $100,000 of money from Nick Fuentes, who's not been convicted of a crime, and putting him on a no-fly list when he's not been convicted of a crime. Now, that is something that has, like, libertarians or people who believe in freedom should have some interest in. It doesn't matter how you feel about the kid's politics. If you think that the federal government should not be allowed to seize money and put people on a no-fly list for having politics that they don't like, then you could see why that documentary would be, worthy to make. So anyway, now basically what happened, from what I understand of the situation, is that this documentary was going to be aired at the Anthem Film Festival, which is Freedom Fest's film festival. And then there was talk, although I don't know if it was ever actually scheduled, of Nick Fuentes coming and being on a panel. From what I understand, and it's, I don't know, I heard Jason talk about this a little bit on Buck Johnson's show. And I talked to some of the people at Freedom Fest about it. Exactly what happened and how this was, like, the message was conveyed to each other, I think what happened more or less was Freedom Fest didn't know anything about Nick Fuentes, didn't know who he was. We're like, hey, yeah, we're down to do all of this. Then they found out after announcing that he was coming a little bit more about who he was. They were like, we're not really sure about that. What ended up happening ultimately was that he didn't come, the film wasn't shown. Now, a lot of people have been critical of Freedom Fest for pulling it, for pulling the film. The devil's kind of in the details about what exactly was said from each party. I don't know I wasn't there for any of this. Personally, I think what should have happened was that film should have been shown. I think it's an important thing that libertarians should stand up for people's rights, even if we don't agree with them politically on everything. And so I think the film should have been shown. It's an important thing. I mean, that's a serious threat to everybody, and particularly everybody who's a dissident of any kind, who opposes the current regime. The idea that the federal government could just seize all of your money and put you on a no-fly list without ever charging you, let alone convicting you of any crime, that seems worthy to me. Now, why that didn't end up happening, I don't know if this was something that could have been worked out and wasn't. I don't know who, you know what I mean, like how this was presented or could have been presented differently. I just don't really know the details. I'm open to talking about this. In fact, I've said that I would have Jason on the show and he could kind of give his side of the story. Same offer to anyone from Freedom Fest if they wanted to tell their side of the story. Like, I'd be fine with any of that. However, you could criticize Freedom Fest for not having Nick Fuentes' movie show shown at their festival. You could criticize maybe Jason for saying, hey, you should have been upfront in presenting this to them and saying, like, look, just so you know, this is like a very controversial figure that for whatever reason gets people very worked up, and then, kind of explained it in some other way so they could, just present it in a way that they were comfortable with. However, for the Southern Poverty Law Center to criticize them for what? They were going to have this guy and then decided not to have him. Proof that this is a far right racist. If anything, if the Southern Poverty Law Center wasn't like just the dishonest pieces of shit that they are, they would look at that and go, oh, I guess this isn't what we thought, because they actually didn't. They wanted to distance themselves from this guy. There's a little bit of a lesson in there, by the way, that this cancel culture stuff, no matter how much you try to cancel someone, it's not going to win you any favor with these types. Okay, back to the article. Still, some libertarian speakers belonging to the Mises Caucus, a far-right group that won control of the Libertarian Party in May, we sure did, associate with far-right figures. Dave Smith, That was my favorite part of the article about me. Dave Smith, a comedian and a Mises Caucus member who now runs the party's social media, is a featured speaker at Freedom Fest. Smith and Fuentes have appeared on each other's podcasts at least 3 times. Smith has called Fuentes a, quote, fellow traveler. Ooh, the damning indictment. Okay, so first off, I don't know, a far-right group, whatever. I don't even care about getting into arguing that. We're a libertarian group. That's what we are. And probably most people who are far-right would not consider the Mises Caucus a far-right group, but whatever. That's just the pejorative that they throw at anyone who doesn't fit into their progressive worldview. The sloppiness with all of this, it's like, if you're going to write, if you had like 1 ounce of integrity in your soul, and you're writing a thing on hate watch that's designed to, like, let's get real, this is designed to hurt people. You're designed to, like, you're trying to put a stigma on somebody and make their life and the life of their families more difficult. Like, that's why you're writing this piece. You'd think you'd feel some obligation to just do a little bit of research, get your basic facts down, not just like make. So just saying, I don't run the party's social media. That's just not true. I've helped with the Twitter. That's it. I don't even run the Twitter. Most of the tweets aren't from me. And I've helped a little bit with the Twitter. I've never done anything with the Facebook, with the Instagram, with any of the other stuff. So the idea that I run the party's social media is just like, no, that's not accurate. Again, that might be kind of like an irrelevant detail, but it's just like, you're writing this thing on hate watch. Maybe know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't know. Obviously, they didn't speak to anyone who knows what they're talking about. It's probably, appeared on each other's podcasts at least 3 times. No, I've never been on Fuentes' show. He was on my show twice. The 3rd time, we did it on somebody else's platform. And oh yeah, it was a debate. We debated each other. And the debate was was me arguing that he should reject state authority. He should reject state authoritarianism. And then my entire closing argument, I spent arguing that him and his followers should reject racialism also. But I guess that's an unimportant detail. The really important details are that we podcasted together, but that's an unimportant detail. And of course, it's not an important detail that the 3rd time was a debate in which I was rejecting state authoritarianism and racialism. That's not an important detail. But a really important detail is that I called Fuentes a fellow traveler, which, by the way, is not even true. I didn't call Nick Fuentes a fellow traveler. I'm not saying that in some way of like, no, spare me. It's just factually not true. What I said was, the first time I ever met him and had him on the show, he said he was a paleo-conservative. And I was like, oh, I was really interested in all the old paleo-conservatives. I've read a ton of stuff by Paul Gottfried and Pat Buchanan and guys like this, and they were always considered fellow travelers of like the Rothbardian types. So let's see if we're fellow travelers. And then we talked for a while, and we did have areas of large agreement and sure areas of disagreement. But you know what? I don't care. It was an interesting conversation. I enjoyed both of the podcasts we did together. I enjoyed the debate we did together, and I'd have him on again and do it again. I don't know. Screw you. Screw you guys. You don't get to tell me who I'm allowed to talk to and who I'm not allowed to talk to. And, as someone, I debated Nick Fuentes, and I'm a pretty good debater, and kid's formidable. So, man, Southern Poverty Law Center guys, why don't you go try to fucking have a debate with him? See how you do. Okay. So moving on. Yang was a Democratic candidate in the 2020 presidential elections. He won support from a broad